Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Bookworthy. Today is November 3rd, 2022. Hi everybody, thanks for joining me. My name is Chris Rini. I am an artist from New York City. Recently relocated to Denmark with my family on kind of a big old adventure. I make books about mixed martial arts, chronicling each year in the sport via art and essays. And this series is kind of a glimpse into my life and my attempt to reinvent myself as a person, as a man, as an artist in a new country. My wife gets to have a career, my kids go through childhood, and I get to just kind of work. I get a blank canvas, no pun intended. If you would like to follow my work, I would encourage you to go to patreon.com/ChrisRiniArt. I'll be posting all of my work there for free. If you would like to join, you can get a book at the end of the year, or rather, once a year you will get a book. It's not quite at the end of the year. Anyway, I make books. They're wonderful keepsakes. You can get a low tier, get a digital copy, high tier, get a mid tier, get an actual book, and what's the other thing you can do? You can do like a higher tier, and you'll get a piece of artwork and a book. That's where we are right now. But I'll try and make the artwork available to everyone, just because I don't know where social media is going these days. I don't know if Twitter's going to last forever. That's where I have most of my followers. And perhaps I will have to diversify and move on to, Instagram and Tumblr. I'm really loath to embrace TikTok. I'm kind of an older gentleman. I don't know that I go over well there. Anyway, let's have a chat. Are you excited for UFC Fight Night? Rodriguez versus Lemos? I'll tell you the truth. I'm excited every time Marina Rodriguez fights. I'm just interested in her rise. I've really enjoyed her run. She has consecutive wins against Amanda Ribas, Michelle Waterson, Mackenzie Dern, and Yan Xiaonan. Every single one of those women is a legit competitor. I believe they're all ranked fighters in the strawweight division, and it's only it's the marketability and celebrity and what's the word I'm looking for? Global reach of other competitors that I believe are keeping Rodriguez from being more prominently featured in the title talks. Mackenzie Dern is more of a social media darling to none more than Mark Zuckerberg, and Yan Xiaonan and Weili Zhang. They're obviously massive inroads to the Chinese market. Forget it. That makes a difference. That's the kind of thing that's going to keep you in the title hunt, no matter how few wins you have. Even if Marina Rodriguez beat the both of you in the past 12 months, I'm referencing Dern and Xiaonan. Anyway, I'll give you my general take. I'm not much of an analyst, but I'll tell you that having spoken with a lot of analysts, sometimes just one's ability to identify patterns is in itself sufficient to make an educated guess about how fights are going to go. So in this case, I'm really interested in seeing Rodriguez versus Lemos. Lemos is, I would call her an accurate and powerful striker. She really came onto my radar when she beat Angela Hill, who I am a fan of. I like seeing her her creativity both in and out of the cage. She's a dynamic person, but one of the smarter fighters out there in terms of, I don't know, having a broader perspective on the world and how a fighter exists in the marketing realm. I just feel like, anyway, so Lemos, she really put it on Angela Hill. It was really a startling performance. I think that fight was in 2021. Lemos got absolutely handled by Jessica Andrade earlier this year. I actually cranked out one of my better digital paintings on that standing arm triangle. You could see she looked a little. It's always hard to tell if somebody is out of their depth or merely, I think that might have even been like a club and sub situation. Not the traditional kind where you knock someone down and jump on a rear naked choke, but I think Andrade's power allowed her to get the positioning against the fence and lock in the choke, and then it was just a strength thing. Anyway, Lemos rebounded against Michelle Watterson. Great fight. And by great fight, I mean great ability to, navigate Watterson's distance management and, secure she jumped for guillotine and got a cool submission. That was nice. That was a good one. There's still a fan in me. There's a fan in there. I'm not just a editorialist, and I used to view myself as a fan of MMA because you could be dispassionate about it. I just was like captivated by the sport itself. And now I find myself, then you become more of a fan, especially like my time becoming like a true like fan of the sport, during the heyday of George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva, who are, along with being stunning fighters, were immensely likable human beings. So I don't know anything. Then of course there's been, for every, one or two times you come across that, there's like the dozens and dozens of times where you learn something about a person and you're like, ugh, I wish I would have never learned their views on women or politics or, anything. Rights to property and ownership. Oh, Lord. Anyway, so yeah, I'm hyped to see Rodriguez. I like her volume. I like her I don't know, her like kind of a relentlessness. She seems to be somebody who, I don't know if she like, quote, goes for the finish, but she does seem like somebody who has like a, almost like a Diaz-like cumulative effect on fighters. And I've seen some really great moments from her. And I don't know, sometimes it's just like you watch somebody fight, you look at the look on their face and you can, oh wow, this person is fucking determined. They're in the zone. And that just makes her an enjoyable fight. She throws that like really nice front kick up the middle. I know she landed a couple on Mackenzie Dern. That's one of my favorite strikes, the Anderson Silva versus Vitor Belfort, front kick up the middle. Actually, interestingly, Lemos landed that on Angela Hill, and Dern landed that on, Rodriguez landed that on Dern. And so it's kind of cool that both of them have that in their arsenal. We'll see if they trade those. Do you ever notice that in fights? Like a fighter will throw a very, I don't know, not obvious, but like a distinct technique. And then the other fighter will immediately throw that technique just to be like, fuck you, I can do that too. There's two really funny moments I can think of where, the classic is like Frank Mir and Daniel Cormier throwing like jumping spin kicks at each other just because. And then it happened on a real intense level during George St. Pierre versus Nick Diaz. That was really funny. And Nick threw like kind of a high karate kick, maybe a roundhouse up top, and it didn't land, but George, I think, in the heat of the moment, people's egos are just like, yeah, fuck you. I can throw a karate kick too. I'm a Shotokan guy. And he threw the exact same one. I really enjoy that that dynamic. That kind of brings out a certain humanity. You see a certain humanity in people just from the way they fight and the strikes they throw. Let's see. I'm curious about the 3 other fights on this Saturday's card. Neil Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez. Neil Magny, I've been a fan of his since he was on Tough. I think he was on for the Carwin versus Roy Nelson season. And the reason I'm a fan and will always pay attention to him is because I think it was his fight to get into the house. He came back from a deficit. I don't even know if he was down a round. I think it might have just been a 1-round fight, but like a momentum shift. And if you've watched certain fighters who can't come back from a deficit, that shows like a certain, mental toughness. There's some heart there, and there's also some understanding of like, I need to turn this thing around, and then they do it. That's the kind of thing that will make me a fan. I know that there are people who are like fans of styles, and I think there's a certain psychology to fighters that makes me a fan of them as well. Daniel Rodriguez, I didn't really think he won that fight against Li Jingliang, but I will give him credit for capitalizing on it, going for the quick turnaround. That's cool. Obviously, Rodriguez and Jingliang were kind of casualties of the UFC 279, maybe. The Nate Diaz, Khamzat Chimaev pay-per-view. When all the weight shuffling was done, those guys kind of got the short end of the stick. So I don't know how else to say it other than Daniel Rodriguez, he's been on my radar, on my radar. That's going to be one of these signature Chris Rini things, so feel free to hashtag that shit. That's I'm paying attention to. Grant Dawson versus Mark O. Madsen. This is it's always interesting when like an Olympian makes the transition to MMA, and Marco Madsen is Danish, and I've actually met someone who is lifelong, has known him his whole life. She found out that I work in MMA, and I know someone, Mark. He was a little boy, and it was very adorable. And so I'm a little more invested. I'm going to see somebody who knows him, and it's going to be rooting for him. And although I don't think she watches fights, I think she's he's the little kid she grew up. And she is friends with his mother. And finally, another kind of prospect who has a great future potential is Miranda Maverick versus Shanna Young. I know nothing about Shanna Young. I do know that Maverick, has just come back from like 2 back-to-back losses. However, they were against Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield, and I'll tell you right now, that Barber loss is extremely debatable. I think Barber landed some flashier strikes. I know I did a digital painting of that fight for my last book. I don't even remember if it made it into the book. There's a lot of page constraints. Once you go over 100 pages, forget it. The printing costs go through the roof, and so I have to be really judicious. That's another reason it's great to be on Patreon. I will post all of that stuff. You will get access to that. And I'm working with my editor to come up with a digital version of the book that has everything I've done in it. So we'll see how that comes out. I might have to just do it as a file, instead of book format. So Maverick, and then her second loss was against Erin Blanchfield, who also looks like a stellar prospect. So I think those are both entirely palatable losses. I think she was just, kind of bumping up against her peers. It's kind of one of those things where there's something about the women's divisions there's still a level of youth to them. They're just not as old as the other divisions, and there are fewer avenues for women to come through. And it reminds me a bit of like the earlier years of Tough, maybe the first 10 seasons or maybe even 15 seasons of Tough, where like you could see people on that show who are gonna make a splash, are gonna be, you know, your TJ Dillashaw's, your Cody McKenzie's, you know, there's people like that. Michael Johnson. I'm trying to think. There's the Dominic Cruz season. There were some good people. Maybe that was the TJ Dillashaw season as well. No, that would be crazy. That would be crazy if those guys. No, that would. Anyway, there's just a certain glut of MMA right now that makes it hard to track, and that's why I make this book series. I really want to cut away all of the chum. I use that word a lot. I know it's kind of a rude way to talk about the fighters, but it's more about the programming. It's about, you know, this is a sport. It's special. It's wonderful. And if we could narrow our focus down to the things that are worth remembering, worth talking about, worth ruminating on, you know, that's pretty profound. I'm going to probably do a catch-up piece on what's his name? Hands of Stone, John Lineker. You know, he won the, I think the bantamweight title there over at ONE. It was a great performance. And then he was getting worked. He was getting worked in his first title defense. And then he took a low blow that actually broke his cup. And I might do something about that. But I already did a piece about him winning the title. And I might have to do that just as an obligatory follow-up. Anyway, I'm looking at this past week's card for the UFC. I've already done pieces on Calvin Kattar and Arnold Allen, both in their wins. Kattar versus Giga Chikadze and Allen versus Dan Hooker. I don't know if I will do a piece about Allen versus Kattar, given how unresolved it was. We'll see. I would love to hear your thoughts on how you like things represented. I'm thinking about adding an option to talk about imagery. You know, what do you like to see? What should be seen? What is one of the great joys of making this book is watching a fight and trying to figure out what is the single image. Is there a single image that can encapsulate the feel of a fight? So that's kind of cool. I'm gonna watch. I haven't watched Khalil Roundtree versus Dustin Jacoby, but I was listening to the Heavy Hands podcast, and they were just speaking so highly of that fight. So I thought I'd watch that, see if that's something I want to put in. I think Roundtree, I did a piece on him earlier this year, kicking Carl Roberson in the guts. I made a comment on Twitter at Rini MMA, where I said, like, whenever Khalil Roundtree wins a fight, it looks like someone. It looks fake. It looks like somebody like making like a cinematic reenactment of like a kung fu movie or something. You know, it's wild. You know, I always think about that knee stomp he got against DeKirico. That's also in Volume 3 of The Fine Art of Violence, my book series, available at chrisrini.com. And so I like him. I like the way Roundtree has spoken about the psychology of fighting and his need to really be in the zone to fight, and the anxiety that he deals with. And I mean, I have trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a terribly big or strong guy, so I experience that anxiety whenever I go. And it is one of those things where it's like, oh, if I train 3 days a week, I feel a lot better than, you know, and I can get some momentum. I'm not training right now. Right before moving to Denmark, I got my knee torn up. I would say it's more my fault than the guy I was training with. I had poor leg lock defense, and I defended poorly. And man, it was awful hearing that sound and hitting the ground. But that's life. And speaking of knees getting shredded, I'm going to probably do a charcoal drawing of Roman Dolidze versus Phil Hawes. That was a rough one to watch, although they were beautiful grappling sequences. So it's a little silver lining everywhere. All right, we're at the 20-minute mark. I think I'm going to try and keep these videos around 20 minutes for now. It was great being here with you. Thanks for taking the time. I'm working on this big painting series. I'm going to try and have 12 paintings done by the end of the year. I've got 2 down, 10 to go, and I've got a huge list of fights to kind of catch up on, do some charcoal sketches. I know that Mackenzie Dern versus Yan Xiaonan. Let's see, Nate Diaz with Tony Ferguson. Those are going to make it onto the palette, onto the canvas. And I don't know. We'll see where else we go from there. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourself, and I'll be back Tuesday and Thursday. That's what we're doing now. Bookworthy, Tuesday and Thursday. TNT. My name is Chris Rini. Go to chrisrini.com for some books. Visit me on patreon.com/ChrisRiniArt, and you can see lots of updates. Or I'm on Twitter @RiniMMA. Also, there's a cotton bureau. If you want to get some shirts, you can support me one way or another. I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.